Welcome to episode 2 of Reshaping Leicester Tigers. And as I said last week, we went for the big guns in episode 1. We couldn't get them. And thankfully, in episode 2, we've managed to get them off the sofa, get them here, get them ready to go. Not been doing much for 12 months. Have you, Scott Clarke, the club's head of community?
Well, been doing a fair bit, but not a lot out of the office, I would say, yeah.
No. So the reason you're here, Scott, is because, let's be honest, we talk a lot about the Tigers family. We talk a lot about community. We talk a lot about community rugby. And in reality, and I'm quoting the chairman, if you will, we probably learned more about what we did during the pandemic when we started to lose elements of community rugby and not be able to actually get out and engage with supporters, engage with people in Leicester, Leicestershire, across England, even across the world, which we'll touch on in a minute. So let's start with a very, very simple question for you. What is it? And this might actually help some people at Leicester Tigers staff-wise, but what is it that you actually do, Scott? Because you do sit there and we all know you're in the building, but I'm very intrigued to know exactly what a head of community does.
That's a $1 million question. Unfortunately, not a $1 million budget. But yeah, obviously community falls into a very vague sort of like category where I tend to think of it really simply, that if you're dealing with, well, what is the community? I would say it's almost everything outside the first team. And to some degree, well, they're actually part of it as well. So Tigers community really is charged with taking the positives from what we do, which is, a great rugby environment, a really positive sporting environment, a great social environment that Leicester Tigers is and creates, and using that positive force to help others in our wider community and engage others. So whether you're 2 or 82, that is community. So somewhere along that, I am charged with finding ways of getting those people involved, bringing a bit of Tigers magic to their environments, and hopefully enriching their day-to-days, and ultimately, hopefully, getting involved in rugby and supporting Tigers.
I think in at least the last 12, maybe 6 months more so, but in the last 12 months, what we've seen with sport is the impact it has on the community, and professional sport has probably taken the limelight because when it returned, everyone went, great, I've got sport back in my life. But actually, those kind of undercurrents has been a lot of people haven't been able to participate in sport. And that's where you guys kind of lead and take the charge, isn't it? And you haven't been able to have what you would call boots on the ground, growing the game out there on the grass.
Yeah. And you can look at sport for sport's sake, but actually I think everyone's become more aware of the physical and mental well-being.
Yeah.
The benefits to education being physically active have had it. And therefore you see the wider impact of not having those boots on the grass. And I think, there's a lot more people that have taken up jogging and walking and getting outside because you've suddenly realised how important it is. But what we are still missing greatly is the social interaction of sport, and that working in teams and all the additional benefits that come in, not just to your life as an adult, but as a youngster, your education, how you communicate with peers, how you win, you lose, how those other elements of it. I think that's the biggest thing for me that we are fighting to get back to, is actually how can we get out there and start engaging, groups of people, individuals, and actually start that social interaction that sport is renowned for. And I think what you're right in saying, what everyone's seeing is the elite function of sport. But you see the top end, incredible athletes, dedicated to it, working in bubbles with all the testing protocols and everything else. And it is great to watch it, because watching sport is a social interaction normally. And I've noticed that BT are doing some amazing app things where you can sit with your mates and watch it on various screens. So trying to pull that back in is a massive thing for now. And we're now at a stage where I think we're really starting to feel the pinch of the impact of that loss of working together outside on the grass, and we're desperate to get it going again, because for me that is the biggest loss in school time, outside of school time, at the rugby clubs, and again at all other sporting clubs.
What we've seen too is, obviously, we've talked a lot about lost revenue in particularly Leicester Tigers, specifically to us, but across all sports. And actually, in many ways, what that revenue has also taken, or lost revenue has taken away, is the ability to go out and offer free programs and offer education programs. So I know when we talk about community rugby in particular, and I'm quoting from our website, is you guys oversee obviously camps, clinics, and that's your match days and that's your weekend activity. There's the rugby element of, but actually one of the biggest parts is this Tigers education. So when you talk about education, it's not that you employ teachers per se, is it? So can you tell me a little bit about what the education programs entail?
Yeah, I mean, we're fortunate. We've had, and we still have got some amazing partners that support us in the work we do. So Nottingham Building Society being one, who have not only supported us prior to COVID, but have continued to support us during COVID and allow us to try and create opportunities for us to go into areas that the terminology underserved. So areas of need where certain individuals may be struggling and not reaching the attainment levels that you'd hope. So, you know, this statement at the moment about levelling up, what we try and do with our community program, as you sort of like to say, would take the positives from rugby. So all the values, all the ethos, all the excitement of Leicester Tigers, and bring that into a school environment or a community environment where just by us being there, the young people are enthused. And once you've got young people enthused and excited that somebody different is in, you can then almost like not hide it in the agenda, but introduce the education element in a positive light, you know. And I've had children come up to me and say, you know, I'll go, what are you doing today? And they'll go, I'm not doing French. But actually, not that we're doing French, but they're actually doing maybe some maths or numeracy, literacy, you know, or some wider education piece where we are engaging them through sport and they are intrigued and interested and learning at the same time. So although our, you know, community staff may not all be teachers, some have teaching qualifications, and actually they're all coaches. And obviously teachers are, you know, very professional coaches and doing an amazing job. And we're, you know, our part of ours is to go in and support that network and try and deliver certain topics in a different way that actually may engage some of those that aren't engaging properly. And then there's a whole load of, I guess what you'd call is peripheral services that we try and build in that support teachers and the local community where normal mainstream education isn't working for that individual. And so try and pull those together is what we're trying to do, and use sport as a positive.
I might be giving away your age, but you're going to celebrate a milestone shortly, or you're coming into a milestone at the club of 20 years as a full-time employee.
Yeah, I started when I was 6.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, quite clearly. Excuse me. What I'm intrigued by then is how much it's changed, because across 2 decades, you've seen, well, effectively the better part of professional rugby come into its own, go through the challenges of the last 12 months, but how much change you've seen maybe even prior to 12 months from now across the 2 decades?
Yeah, well, I guess it was definitely a lot simpler, I think, a lot smaller, a lot more low key. When I joined, I was fortunate. I came into an environment that was really, really well set up to start off with. So I had a former player, and that's how it happened at a lot of those times. Injured player had sort of like been looked after by the club, I think, and had a great aptitude for this. But Jim over-ended, finished his playing career quite early and started to set up a community department with Andy Key. So very closely linked to the playing side and the development side. And we had a really sort of like wonderful opportunity with a main sponsor, and a lot of people will probably remember the Alliance of Leicester tag program. That was my first role. I came in as the rugby development officer to sort of like run the Alliance of Leicester tag program, and we just started to look at rugby camps, and we'd ran 1 or 2 locally. We weren't doing match day coaching or anything like that, but it was quite a nice small program based at one of many porter cabins situated around the stadium. I think I had 10 moves in 10 years, and it was a very different environment. You know, we just won 2nd of our European Cups, and I think we've got, when I joined, we got 2 on the bounce in Premiership at the same time, and we managed 4 on the bounce. And we had a really vibrant city that hadn't really had that kind of environment before, and everyone was working together. I think one of the biggest difference we face from that time is the resources that the schools had as well. They had a big structure of partnership development managers that was solely focused on sport. Each school had a funded program whose sole role was to create sport and sporting opportunities for their youngsters. And so there was a really strong network of professionals that had time dedicated to do that. Now, I'm pleased to say Leicester has been pretty unique and managed to hold on to something in the city for quite a while in that, through Leicestershire Urban Sport now has developed a wider network. But it was a really positive time to be involved with, very easy to communicate with people. And I think it was easier, more acceptable to go into schools as well. I think over those 20 years, there's a lot more bureaucracy brought in, a lot more challenges to access sport. And of course, that's been really extenuated in the last year. Just now what we're looking at to get back in with COVID protocols and trying to match DCMS guidelines so that you're matching the school's protocols when, before you've even got into the door, whereas beforehand it was almost pre-organised. Everyone was going to take part, everyone was on board. Every primary school in that area was looking forward to it. It was into a sport calendar. And every final was down at Welford Road. And it was a wonderful sort of like time to be involved with. We started then to add a bit of sport, health, nutrition to the programs, and started to run a healthy schools program, which again had really good funding through local council grants, which have long since gone as well. And then we started to widen the net, and started to do more and bring more staff in and develop the program. But early days, it was pretty much Jimmy, and myself. And Jenna, who was there as well, was working sort of like part-time on a sport program, and it was really at its fledgling, and it's built from there.
So let's bring that now to 12 months ago, and this stuff isn't necessarily the niceties of it all, but the pandemic has hit every rugby club, every professional rugby club. Tigers lost more than 30 staff through it in redundancies, departures. You were a large chunk of that, including also a lot having to move into furlough because there was nothing going on in a physical sense for them to get out and do. So on the raw numbers of it, you mentioned that. How many staff did you have 12 months ago?
We had 14 full-time staff operational. Obviously, at certain times, we might have 30 or 40 people out there working, certainly in the summer periods of time, but actually full-time dedicated staff across a variety of programs, we have 14.
And then you're down to how many now, 12 months on?
We have 4 full-time staff at this moment in time. We are trying to re-recruit, and some of that more recent staff losses because of people making choices about working in community sport linked to a professional sports profession. At the end of the day, I think what everyone realised at that time, it was a shock to a lot of people, is actually my job could be at risk.
Yeah.
Because the one thing you are in professional sport and in most sport, whether it's grassroots, is you're positive. You always think you're going to win next week, no matter what's happened. We'll get it sorted on Monday and we'll change it and we'll come back. And that's always been the attitude to everybody. And unfortunately, COVID didn't have a next week chance really. It was just, that's it, and all of a sudden you realise, well, we can't have crowds and we can't have, the stadium jumping and pumping ready for a game. Clearly, that's a huge change in our financial operations. I think the easiest way for me to say it, and this has always been a bit something that I feel really passionate about, is if you think about what Tigers have done over those 20 years, and I haven't sat down and added it up, and we have raised quite a bit of money, right? So through community, we run rugby camps and we do events and we have sponsors and we do quite a lot of events where there is funding coming in, but we reinvest that in what we do. Yeah. And so if you think about it, we 12 months ago, we were talking somewhere in the region of £700,000-800,000 worth of funding going into the community. So going into physical activity that we were doing, whether that was in the schools, whether it was in the local clubs, whether it was, Butlins for the Tigers challenges, whatever we were doing, it was a lot of investment into the community work we do, and that all went more or less immediately. Certainly a lot we generated ourselves and put back in went immediately, thanks to COVID. So we lost the Tigers challenge events, we lost the whole summer rugby program, we lost all our match day operations that actually brought funding in for us to then go out and employ staff who 9 to 5 could go into schools, could visit places, I don't want to give a myth away, could escort the mascot to somewhere and have a fun event, and get him out of the cage out the back. But that all went. So I'd suddenly gone from being somebody who was, again, on the global side, perhaps organising things in different parts of the world as well, to driving a laptop for 10 hours a day, trying to support my staff and support the things we were doing and keep some of those things alive. And we managed to. We did manage to keep some things alive, but a huge change, a huge impact. Yes, we lost, and the thing is, we lost some really good staff in this. And I think it was well documented. I think Andrea has said, none of the people that went would have gone unless it had been for this. There was everybody. We had a really good team. We were really going somewhere. We just started to do some really exciting things. Everything was looking bigger and better, and everything was almost like the next phase was ready to go on. So I was thinking, we've got 14, 15 staff, but next year we're going to have 25. We were thinking that way, and everything was going to really have a bigger impact. And some of the lessons we'd learned were almost, we were setting things up to go to the next stage, and it's sort of like the rug was pulled away from you. It's been really hard on a lot of people, but again, not as hard as those that have lost lives and lost family and friends. So you have to put it in perspective. But real impact on what we were hoping to do and what we'd built up over a long period of time to get to.
It's actually, I'm one of the, and I honestly don't take it for granted, but I'm one of the privileged few who get to be a part of game days still, obviously with work. And when you go to Mattioli Woods Welford Road, or when you go to an away game, it's amazing how many people talk about how you miss that community kids running around on the pitch, or the mascots out there high-fiving kids in, the Breeden stand or the MBS stand. Or it's amazing how those little things that were just background noise to match day, but were part of match day, you notice when they're gone. Now, you might not think about them when you walk past them on a normal match day, but it's amazing how all of that goes. And you've got the Prima Tiger Cup that used to happen for a couple of hours after some games and into the night. You'd have that noise if you're doing interviews post-game with the players and there's kids running around still playing. And it's crazy how those little things going do take away from that whole experience of going to game day. And I'd imagine when you've seen it grow, you've probably felt it harder if you're at a game now.
I mean, it's heartbreaking, really. I speak to John Norman, who's the managing director, chairman of Prima Solutions, and one of our longest continuing sponsors, and is still continuing to sponsor the Prima Tiger Cup. And John and I have spoke for years about this. That, we're seeing players play for our first team that played in the Prima Tiger Cup.
Yeah.
And that for me, under 10s, and they're retired. I've seen Sam Harrison retire. How many times? Well, retired to Australia, I would say, playing out there.
Yeah, he's fine. Don't worry about him.
Yeah, so we see, we've seen that, but what the important thing is for me is what I see is the families that arrive from 8:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
At Oval Park or Leicester Forest, Old Newts or Brooksby, wherever we're running multiple festivals and camps, and have a full day at Tigers. And I see them leave at 7, 8 o'clock at night with their kids, sometimes mopped up over a shoulder of a dad, or mum holding muddy kit and stuff like that. But actually, I see the kids and they've had a day at Tigers that they will remember, I hope, for the rest of their lives. And I've heard the noise they make, in warm-up, when the stadium is, still filling up, and maybe the corporate guys are having their food and stuff like that. The noise the kids make while the players are warming up, their chatter, it's almost like a sea lions on the beach. You can hear that they're all chatting away all the time, and it's just the players notice it. Players always talk to me when you see, they love it. They come out after their game, battered, and they've had a shower, probably an interview with you, and then they go and make their food. And some of them always stop and watch those games, and away players say, you do this after every game. We go, if I'm allowed to. Yeah, if the groundsman lets me, if Edmo lets me on the pitch, I'd do it before, during, and after every game. But, that kind of buzz always reminds me, and this is what I think too many people forget at times, is we are a rugby club, which is a very big one.
Yeah.
We are a rugby club, and it's that gives the rugby club life.
Yeah, once a week, you are reminded that the brand and the business get put aside for 12 hours.
And to be fair, it's why I'm in it. And I come from a grassroots rugby club. I was never big enough or fast enough or daft enough to make it, at a high level. It wasn't even professional, obviously. Otherwise, I'd have been there. But, but I've got, I've told lots of people, I've got a video of me running around the pitch at 8. Pete Wheeler came into my school at 12, 13 and gave all the rugby lads a season ticket. Of course, the first thing that happens, my dad had to take me down. My dad was a Tigers fan before the war. So I know what that's all about, and that's why I'm here. For me, it's my club. I 100% love those aspects of my club that, yes, a talented player going all the way through to the first team and playing and getting, Ollie Smith running out on the pitch at England or a British Lions, or I love watching Youngs the other day. I can remember Ben Youngs on the Tigers rugby camp at Swaffham in 2003. Right, he was amazing then, and obviously certain pedigree behind him. But those kind of stories are very far and remote, but gladly happen. The real stories are the ones that arrive, en masse every day and go back to their rugby clubs buzzing and hopefully enthused to carry on playing the game. And I think that's probably going to be our biggest challenges moving forward. That rugby is everything in my life, and I'm always amazed that people don't know about it. Unfortunately, get the paper today, you'll see quite a bit about the England team. You might get half a page. Well, I think there's a page in the Times this book today about Premiership rugby, but we're still, there's still so many more people that can get the positive, life-affirming, life-changing environment that I, cherish and love. If we go out there and do the job right, and community does its job right.
We'll touch on that in a little bit, because there is some exciting things happening around growing the game, if you will. Look, to wrap that up, I'll give you one thing that I always think about and you take for granted is when someone like, Nemani now maybe, or when someone like Thomas Lavanini emerges from the change room and a kid sees him for the first time and you hear that kid go, "Mum, look at how big he is," or "Wow," or "Oh my gosh." And that, you don't hear that these days. And that's a bit, those are the little things you miss, of the kid realizing, just seeing their hero in the flesh for the first time. And that's what we're going to look forward to. Look, you talked about council and you talked about community grants, etc. Your relationships, your stakeholders, you've got to work with quite a few. Now, the easy ones to tick off and discuss is obviously the RFU, England Rugby, Premiership Rugby. Then you've got a whole host of your own local Tigers, as you said, partners, Nottingham Building Society, Next, various ones that have come through the years. As you said, Prima Solutions have been around almost longer than you've been around, which is saying something.
Yeah.
Creesh, that's saying something. But how do I put this in a way that, how do you make sure you're being innovative and unique while also having to work and do stuff that is maybe, this is something all Prem clubs have got to do, or you've got Project Rugby, which is fantastic, but you've got to find ways to also be different, because you also are trying to sell Tigers over Worcester, over Wasps, over Saints, aren't you, to those local?
Yeah. I mean, there's a few things. Obviously, we work within and technically are governed by the RFU. So they are, I guess they're the custodians of the ethos of the game and set the rules and regulations that we must abide by, and the laws of matches and things. So if you take, for instance, now we're very much governed by what the RFU have agreed with government and the DCMS to what we're allowed to do out there. So the Ready for Rugby protocols that are out there that are COVID safe, we're back to stage D of that return to play. So we have to adhere to that, and we work very closely with those, and we've always tried to lead on them. And I think that's one of the differences that we would say from Tigers we do. We take solutions to the RFU that turn their ethos and their best wishes into practical delivery. How do you run an event at Minehead Butlins with 10,000 people or 7,000 people there from Wales, Scotland, Ireland, England? And bear in mind, the Welsh Rugby Union, the Irish Rugby Union, the Scottish Rugby all have different rules for minis and juniors. An under 10 in Wales, they they probably have 5 in the scrum, but it's completely uncontested and you can't pass from the base. Whereas in England, it's 3, and we have to work all the way through around those rules, and we have to take the ethos and say, look, this is the way it's going to do, because the RFU are custodians, lawmakers, and sort of like set the parameters. They don't go out there and do all the work we do. We actually do it. We're on the grass. And again, I'll say, the RFU have been hit really hard in this process by the community game. There were 30 facilitators around the region. I think it's 5 now. So the RFU don't have any boots on the ground anymore. So we see that as the most important thing we can do, is that, professional staff promoting the game and delivering it in the right way and making sure we support the volunteer network physically I think is a key for us. So we work with them. Premiership Rugby is obviously it's the vehicle for the Premiership Rugby teams to act as one nationally, and they've been working hard behind the scenes to secure programs that would be mapped out nationally. So rather than do just in this one area, they can say, right, we've got 12 clubs delivering in Newcastle, and so that works for certain commercial partners and works for maybe some more government direct funding streams, but very much on a similar agenda to what we would do anyway. And we've always tried to be supportive of what Premiership Rugby bring to us in that thing, and work with them and help, again, steer how that is shaped and what that delivers. And you've mentioned sort of Gallagher Project Rugby. That is very much a grassroots, a real showpiece of partnership, because it's RFU working with the Professional Game Board has created an environment for us to go and help tackle areas that perhaps the RFU in itself and Sport England have struggled with, such as getting more BAME, local social economic groups and disability groups into rugby. So Project Rugby allows us to go out and really do some grassroots development stuff and try and get more people into the clubs from those areas. And so we work with both those partners in varying levels as part of what we do. But actually, Tigers is more than that. We have our own agendas, our own focus points, and our own ability to tackle those issues that are really local to us, and do our own vision of what community should be. And therefore, we work with our more local supporters and partners, and work with the networks at the educational authorities and the local governments at that time have. So presently, very much so, we're trying to work closely with Leicestershire Rutland Sport, which is the partnership organisation based at Loughborough that tries to oversee and encourage and support sporting activity in all of the schools across our Leicestershire and Rutland. And of course, part of that is trying to, we may have an agenda to do something. It doesn't mean it's right for them or doesn't work at that time of year. So try and make sure that what we do is helping rather than just getting in the way. Try and present it in a way that partner can support and add value to. I think that's the one thing now more than ever we need partnerships, because there's less funding, less people, and a bigger challenge. So we've got to work closer together moving that forward. I don't think everybody understands as well that you've got the RFU, and then we've got the Leicestershire RFU, I guess, or the Leicestershire Rugby Union. So everyone of a certain age would have heard of the 57 Will Carling quote. But actually each area has a constituent body that really is the local custodian of the game, and they represent the junior rugby clubs. RFU for me is Twickenham. The CB, the constituent body, is the local RFU, and full of unbelievable volunteers who give up their time to facilitate the game and make sure the game works and thrives at the local junior rugby clubs. And each rugby club will have a representative on it. The chair lady, Barbara, is there. She's been involved in sport across the whole of Leicestershire and Rutland in education, but also from a base at Oakham. And they really make sure that rugby happens in the right environment, supports the clubs. Then you've got the schools rugby association, so all these different sort of like
red tape.
Yeah, and it's great. You've got the independent schools that actually have a strong rugby ethos, but you have the state schools or the school system that actually, rugby's not really on the agenda that much. And so you've got to work with all these parties, pull them all together, and hopefully try and find things that are exciting, positive, well organised and delivered, so that it's as easy as possible for everybody to get involved in. Yes, there are agendas. Yes, other people have agendas, and our job is to, we're not political. We're Leicester Tigers, so we're here for the right reasons, and hopefully they see that, and we can work with them. Some really good people. That's the important thing. That people with the right ethos trying to do the right thing is always a good place to start.
Are you at all worried? And I guess it could go one of two ways, that the lack of community local rugby will see volunteers fade away in the last 12 months, or are you of the thinking that actually that lack has made, I guess, people want it more, and they might come back in droves in a bigger way?
Yeah, I think I genuinely am concerned at this moment in time. I think it's going to have a twofold. I think there'll be a polarisation of those that are already 100%, a bit like me, rugby bonkers. Just absolutely buying for the day that we can get out and run around and get back and get involved with the game properly. But as you know, to make up any team, and I've ran first, second and third teams, phoning up people on a Friday night to persuade them to put the boots on again, so that the second team prop can go and play for the first team, and you can getting some 45-year-old who's had retired 5 times in the last 10 years still puts his boots on so you can get a team out. Those people on the periphery, my concern over the last 12 months is lost. And also, I think rugby's been, probably because of the contact nature of it, it's a difficult sport to get back on.
Yeah, definitely.
And we've always been at the back of the queue. So football got going, grassroots, get on, kick a ball about. Lots of other sports got it. And then, we'll talk about rugby later. And the RFU have done some great work working with DCMS to get this return to play protocols agreed. But it was always after everybody else has done it.
Yeah.
If you're a 9-year-old or a parent of a 9-year-old who's been homeschooled for 6 months, as we have, and we just came out of lockdown 2 or whatever, lockdown 1, and you can go and play football with your mates from school at that football club, but you still can't go back to the rugby, that is a big concern to me. And that lost year can really affect rugby massively, because each year, as they go from under 11s, 12s, and then the big jump, say from under 12s to under 13s, where they go to 15 aside. I'm worried for the junior rugby clubs that had a nice under 12s or shaping up to have a good under 12s a year ago. We've lost a year, haven't we? So, in 2019-20. And now they're actually at the end of start of January, they're going to be going into under 13s. Well, to move up to under 13s, you've got to go from running a squad, say, of 15 to probably a squad of 25 to guarantee getting 15 out every game. So, that's going to be really hard. And that is probably where we're going to have to spend a lot of time working hard behind the scenes to get that enthusiasm back, to put on a proper Sunday morning product at every club, and this is the grassroots clubs that will be doing great jobs doing this, and make sure we get back that family environment. And if you've got a kid in the under 11s or under 12s, he brings a mate from school who hasn't played rugby or doesn't play rugby to get those numbers going again.
Yeah,
I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for us. I am worried about it. Adult game, a lot of people would have hung their boots up and hadn't had that phone call in September. and the boots are well and truly hung up. I know I'm in a great state after driving a laptop for 10 months. Not that I would be playing, but I certainly wouldn't be going out and doing much running at this moment in time. I'm worried about that, and that's your third teams going at clubs.
Yeah.
So clubs are going to be hurt. Schools, it's not been played in schools for a long time. I'm talking secondary. And so we've got a big challenge, a huge challenge.
Just make sure you stop calling me on Fridays to play, because I'm not.
Hey, I watched you play as a boy. When you came down in 2007, those silky skills.
We don't talk about it. It's fine.
Yeah, all right.
Tell me a little bit about the global partner clubs. So you were at the forefront of obviously seeing it's kicked off with the 𝗟𝗧𝗧𝗩, who again I've been privileged enough to see firsthand a couple of times. Let's not go into too much detail, but those global partner clubs and those relationships too, they've been hurt a little bit by all this, but you've still managed to keep that going, and they've obviously all been impacted in their own unique ways in wherever they are in the world.
Yeah, I think it's, I guess the logic was, what's community? We just extended it. And I remember I was speaking to Peter, actually, Tom, and I did a small presentation to the board a while back. And, Leicester Tigers, biggest brand in the world. And, we've got a huge name in rugby. And I know we've got Leicestershire, Rutland, Notts Links, Derbyshire, Staffordshire, and let's not forget Norfolk. Please, let's not forget Norfolk. It's an amazing place full of wonderful, great rugby people as well. So, we've got a wide network that fits into our Tigers region. But if we are a worldwide brand, where are we in the world? Where were we going in the world? So that's sort of like created the global, outreach type program. Difficult on resources to manage that in terms of, when there's so much need here, you sort of like try and balance out. So we try and do it fairly, but we managed to create a really unique bond with some really amazing people who are running clubs, really good junior rugby clubs in different parts of the world, and at varying levels, some in the top 10 as it is now in Italian leagues, others purely social in environments. And we're talking in India, obviously Malaysia, Bangkok, throughout Europe, Dondemond, Dioc, and Rugby Colorno in Italy. So you look across those 6 partnership clubs. I think what I've realised at an early time, when everyone was saying how bad England was affected with COVID and the impact of it, clearly we were aware, and we were in Italy in November sort of thing, but we were aware that Italy was ahead of us and they've had a horrific time.
Yeah.
And again, I think are just going back into a really bad time. And what you realise is we are really all in this together. And so that has actually probably drawn us closer. We're working harder at keeping things going. And it's almost celebrating the fact that 𝗟𝗧𝗧𝗩 vets started training on Thursday last week. Now, I was, if they'd have let me fly out, I was going to put the boots on. But I know, just as you're saying that, I know Dioc in Holland have really been struggling. I know Dondemond have gone back into varying sorts of lockdown and lost some very important people in their club due to this pandemic. Delhi Hurricanes just put something out the other day about training is next Tuesday. So you're sort of like almost rejoicing every time somebody has something positive. We did the race around the world through the foundation, and 𝗟𝗧𝗧𝗩 absolutely nailed that.
They smashed it, didn't they?
Smashed it. They actually destroyed everybody else. But that just shows what a kind of spirit that club's got, and how they're just a stage ahead of us at this moment in time. But that gives us hope. It gives us actually things will get better, and clubs can regroup and rebound. Talking to Italy at the moment about setting up 2 weeks of camps at the end of summer with Rugby Colorno. So we're hopeful we're going to get back to that again. But these partnerships have really, shown to me as well the love of what Tigers can be and should be, and show that actually, the substance of our values and our ethos are worldwide. They actually are bought into, and people. I can assure you that there's a lot of people in Malaysia wearing a Tigers shirt, and they're also watching every single result. And as soon as something happens, I get texts. They live it just as if they're on the doorstep. The world's a small place now, as you know.
Yes. No. Well, yeah. No, I can attest to that. I've walked the streets of KL and seen it. So, look, it's worth.
I'm not going to go there. I'm not.
No, let's not talk about it. It's worth going into and saying, if you are watching and you're interested in more of that, is I think it was back in November or October, there was a really cool series put together. Yourself and Phil Warrington put together a great series of zooming in with the global partner clubs. It's good watching. I enjoyed it. Look, finally, Scott, before we do discuss, so I guess sort of finally, but before we discuss participation, which I want to go into in more detail with yourself and in particular Chris Rose down the line, but one really, I know we've been a little bit dire today, so I want to be a little bit more positive, but this is going to take us back. The foundation, the Leicester Tigers Foundation, of which has done some incredible work, basically got hit pause, didn't it? You hit pause 12 months ago. Let's be honest, not much has happened. You had great plans around various things. You've lost staff that were committed to it. Now, yes, some of that's been repacked up, but where is the foundation at? Because people keep an eagle eye on it and the work that's been done, the donations they've made. Let's be completely honest. Where's the foundation at now? What plans are in place to get that back up and running?
Well, I mean, let's say, I actually think, just across everything, I'm feeling really positive about it. Some of the stuff we've done last month has been really great. So, we've been back in schools this week doing things and helping schools get back on the grass, which is great. The foundation, as you said, the initial, you think about the elements of the foundation, the work we do, it tends to support a lot of vulnerable people, and the vulnerable people have been hit the hardest, and I can, although the Tigers wheelchair team are probably the least vulnerable people I've ever met. They're more robust and they've got incredible people. But wheelchair rugby, for obvious reasons, just immediately stopped. It became impossible to deliver. So we've got some great support from Hayfley. Club sponsors also support the foundation and support the wheelchair rugby program and some of the work we were doing in Send. So if you think about it, quite literally, in February, I was jumping up for joy because I've just got delivery of 9 schools' rugby wheelchairs.
Yes, I've seen them.
They're sitting in final whistle where
I don't fit in them, just for the record.
You definitely won't fit in them.
No, that's right.
And we were planning on going out to run a Send Schools program where we would enable youngsters with any kind of need to participate in what we think is an amazing sport. The Tigers wheelchair rugby team were going from strength to strength. They were pushing for the Premiership. They've got Great Britain players lining up, thinking about the Olympics and all these kind of things, and it just stopped completely. So that was one of them. The HITS program, the NEATS program that we ran from the stadium, and Dynamite had to stop. The plans for the monument, all the things the foundation were getting involved with. Really, we were faced with a really tough challenge, and that was what is going to happen next? So we had to almost freeze it to protect those funds that have been donated for those specific purposes, maximise the benefit that the foundation could get from the furlough scheme. Sadly, we had a member of the team who took voluntary redundancy as well, and fully understand the reasoning why someone would do that for their family and everything else. They had to make the right decision for them, and so we ended up with an environment where it has been mothballed but protected. We are now just starting to unwrap it, should we say. So where it's at the moment is we have started delivery again on our Dynamite programme, which is our 14 to 16-year-olds out of school service, and that's happening down at Welford Road in the classroom there, which is now a COVID-safe classroom. We've appointed, been with us for 9 years anyway, and he's now the foundation manager, and he spent the last month sort of like pulling things out of mothballs and starting to regenerate them, starting to get an education program going. We've just started a brand new program with the Police Crime Commissioner and the Violence Reduction Network, using so like an open inside sport days to bring children in that are at risk, to support them, give them some coping strategies and some understanding of the choices that they can make to create a safer environment for those. And that's all happening down at Welford Road with the foundation. We're working with Rob Tarr and David and the team at Tigers Wheelchair Rugby as to what's next, and we've got hopefully got some interesting plans there. They're still excited. Japan Paralympics looks like it's going to happen, so hopefully 5 of the guys might go away with that. The monument has now moved forward. We've got the hotel has been going up quicker than
Yeah.
any of us expected. And I think when you don't go in from week to week, then all of a sudden you go in and
Exactly. Yeah.
been changed.
Spot on. Yeah.
Yeah, we're working closely with Marshalls about where that might go. And Harvey Gardner, the artist, has redesigned the Tigers head. We are in a position, however, the fundraising for that was immediately impacted. So we've had to review what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And we're communicating to all the people who have donated what that future plan is. But we are going to have what I think will be a superb monument to those that have given their life, the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms, and that will become a centre point of the new plaza. So we are starting to get going again, but rest assured, the funds and all the grants and all the support we've had has been protected during that period, and we've done the right thing in doing that. It's all been given for purpose. So we've as I say, foundation is something separate to the PLC. The charity is lucky enough to have the gift of the brand and the support of the PLC to exist, and it really tackles some key issues that are there, and we're there to support it as a club. But I have to put another one of my hats on, which is I'm a trustee of that foundation, and we are making sure that is going to have a real impact as soon as we can get out there. It's there for a particular purpose. It's there to maximise the benefit from sport and the Tigers brand to help people who really need it, and we've got some exciting plans with Sam driving that. So one of the things that we hope to do is we'll have some really good events as well that the Tigers fan base can get involved in. Golf days. We're talking to Hambo, who again, you talked about key partners. For me, in community, Hambo is a key partner, always has been. But I know Hambo is also a trustee of the Tigers Foundation, and we're working with Hambo. They're doing some amazing things at the Get Busy Living Centre, and what they're building there now is going to be one of the world's best facilities for people who've got serious spinal injuries, and we hope that from the Tigers Foundation and Tigers community standpoint, we can support that and be part of that as one of our key partners. So yeah, plenty going on. Had to be mothballed, did the right thing, and now it's still there, and it will, as I think Peter said, his job was to ensure that the club was here in 10, 50, 20 years' time. I think we more or less mirrored what that was for the foundation, and that's in I won't say rude health, but it's in a good place to start rebuilding.
You talk about, as a final point, you talk about all of these various things that make up community rugby, if you will, and even make up, it's cliche in many ways, but make up the Tigers family. It's incredible. And we could sit here and talk for hours about it, but people don't want to.
I can, anyway.
We know you can, and I'm not far behind you in fairness. But yeah, I think it's incredible when you actually start to dig into what goes on that maybe people, as I said before, just take for granted is part of the rugby club, and actually all those things that create fans. This is ultimately what you're doing, isn't it? Let's be brutally honest. You're creating fans. You're creating members of the club for future through all of the small things you do.
Yeah, I mean, I was just saying, I probably wouldn't have had much choice coming from the family I did that Tigers was going to be my club, but I think of the things that got me engaged in it. I attended a under-9s rugby session on the pitch with Tony Russ from my local school. Peter Wheeler came into my school during the amateur days in the early 80s and spoke to all the rugby lads, and gave us all a schoolboy season ticket. I went for a trial, training session down the Tigers youth team, and I grew up with all those lads that then played and then they went on to play. And you're like, that hasn't changed. It's just a lot bigger, it's just a lot bigger. And unfortunately, to really get to everybody and to carry on growing the club, to fill the stadium, we need more people realising what a great environment it is, but having an easy opportunity to take part. And I think that's probably in a nutshell, that's my job, is to create easy opportunities, take part in the sport and engage with Tigers in a way that's right for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think one of the things we're going to learn a lot about in the next few years is adapted variants of rugby, and actually just because it's touch or just because it's, 7-a-side at schools, well, doesn't mean it's not good. Anybody running around with a rugby ball in their hands and passing it is a positive for me. And also, you know, you talk about it being for Tigers. I think also we've got a duty of care for where we are. And you know, we're lucky that we've got such a magnificent stadium. Matty Wood Stadium Welford Road is such a magnificent stadium at the heart of the city.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're not some concrete monstrosity out on the outskirts or anything like that. We're a really urban, you know, club, and right in the middle of the city that we love. And I think we have a duty of care to give back to that. You know, we're fortunate in what we do. And I think that's the club's ethos as well, that, you know, we don't forget that. Don't forget where you are and what you are and what you can do with that.
I think that probably puts us in a nice position, because what I want to do as part of this series in particular is have that further, more in-depth conversation with you and Chris about, and I'm putting things out there that might not be necessarily in the public domain yet, but it's this idea that there's a lot of work going on, and Andrea spoke about it, about wanting to actually grow participation in the sport, which maybe has taken a back seat sometimes into growing Tigers and the Tigers family. But now there is a serious focus and passion of yourself, Chris Rose, and everyone really about, right, how do we get rugby back at the forefront of a city which, you know, in a lot of ways, the rugby numbers are dwindling, but it's not that it's just Leicestershire, it's national. So, look, I appreciate you digging into that. I appreciate you taking the time. It is Sunday, and it is Mothering Sunday.
Yeah.
So hopefully everyone has done the nice thing for their mums today. But in fairness, I've also given you an hour away from family, which isn't a bad thing. So
That's good. Well,
lovely.
At the moment, any break, to be fair.
Any break is a nice break. Yeah.
I'm lucky. I've got, again, the one thing we didn't touch on is making sure our offers are for everybody.
Yes.
You know, you're not reminded me of it, but, you know, I've got 2 young girls in my.
Absolutely.
I want them to have just as much chance to play rugby with Tigers than anybody else. So I think, you know, you touched on it, but the things we need to do are quite glaringly obvious to us on the inside, and we're working hard to do it in a completely restructured environment. You know, so,
brave new world.
Brave new
world of rugby. Scott, I appreciate your time.
Pleasure, mate. Nice
and the work you're doing.
Yes, and you.
Thank you very much.